Jungle podcast is raw, it's real, it has zero gimmicks, zero bullshit, and absolutely zero fucks to give.
Welcome to the Iron Jungle. This is real, no bullshit, no holds barred, wide fucking open podcast.
We've been at this far too long to be fucking around. This is the jungle, where anything goes, no holds barred.
We're going to be talking about the real shit. How to succeed in a world where you have goals, but there's so much misinformation and bullshit trying to sell you something. This is the informative podcast. And there's no holds barred in the jungle.
The question is, are you ready? Welcome to the jungle.
Welcome to the jungle, baby.
Welcome to the Iron Jungle. Let's go. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back inside the Iron Jungle podcast. This episode, Drew, is going to get people butthurt, my friend. People are going to be, well, it depends. We haven't talked about anything prior to this episode. And for just, let me preface this by saying for people listening, sometimes Drew will send me a list of like notes we're going to talk about. So you can kind of prep. Today we said this is the topic we're going to talk about, and let's go at it. So the topic that is, it seems it's always some sort of hotbed topic, and it's kind of, it went for, you could talk about the history of this, but we're going to talk today about proprietary blends within dietary supplements. The good, the bad, the ugly, whatever it might be. I mean, essentially of proprietary blends. Drew, you started formulation. I mean, we just talked about your age, literally in text messages yesterday. Like 10 years ago, 11 years ago, when I met my now wife, you were just graduating high school, so you're a baby. But you also know enough about dietary supplements to know the history of prop blends and how they used to dominate the industry, and then there were several brands that came out with fully transparent labels, and now we're kind of seeing this influx of sort of blended labels of some prop blends, some not. So your history of prop blends, Drew, let's just, what do you want to start with on this one? Because I think people are going to be super interested on it.
I'm just going to kind of freelance here. Honestly, for the longest time in this industry, it's been proprietary blended because there was a lot of people that had, some newer, cooler technology where, a lot of these things, it got to be ridiculous. Let me rephrase this here. Like when things like No Explode first came out, or other things, like I don't remember exact, I mean, I've been in this game for fucking 10 years, but a lot of times you see some proprietary blended in terms of, it's really common, like things like capsule products, right, or in powder products, where you say proprietary blend, and a quick 101 of proprietary blends, how to read one. If you look at something, for example, and it says the total scoop size is 10 grams. Okay, you know that there's 10 grams of total content per scoop. This has to include the active ingredients and the inactives. The active ingredients would be ingredients that actually, quote unquote, do something to make the formula effective, whether that be, like, say, pre-workout, creatine, beta-alanine, caffeine, L-tyrosine, dynamine, teacrine, whatever it may be. Those are your active ingredients. Mm-hmm. The inactive ingredients are things you have to account for as well. So like when you see, like right now in a fully broken up panel, you see other ingredients. Those are things that are going to be called excipients. And that's going to include things such as your flavor system, your sweetener used, acids, flow agents like silicon dioxide and calcium silicate, coloring, whatever it may have you. So if you were to look at back in the day, something you may see on, say, let's go with a powder, for example. This got really nasty with all the concentrated pre-workouts, is say you have a 5-gram scoop of pre-workout. Now these days, if you see a 5-gram scoop in a what is, you're like, okay, let's see what's in this bad boy. It depends on what it is. Sometimes 5 grams can be a hell of a lot, but it can also be like hardly anything.
Right.
Typically, the longer the list of ingredients you see, and a smaller scoop size is going to cause concern. If you see like a 5-gram scoop and you see things like creatine and beta-alanine, and these things that traditionally, or aminos, and they traditionally have a higher gram scoop, like if, for example's sake, if like most cases you want like 2 to 3, sometimes even up to 5 grams of creatine itself, and they have beta-alanine, or people typically, depending if you want it all at once, anywhere from 1.6 to 3.2, and you have aminos in there that you need at least a couple grams. If you're having all these things in there and you only have 5 grams in a scoop in a proprietary blend, and that doesn't include the flavor, the flow agent, and I'm guessing there's probably other things in there, that's a concern that raises a lot of people's interest. Like, okay, how much could possibly be in here in a proprietary blend if I'm supposed to get this many grams? The pie is only so big. How can you divide up that pie equally? And that's what causes concerns. So over the years, it's evolved where people are like, I don't trust this proprietary blend. It's underdosing the ingredients, and then spawned a lot of the full transparency and broken out fully transparent labels. That's kind of the segue, the short summation of this. So when you read other ingredients, if something, or this applies for food too, so pay attention. If you see the ingredients on food, like say, whether it be like something complicated, like a cake mix, I'm just picking something random off the shelf, or crackers, how about crackers? You'll see the highest dosed ingredient it's for the lowest ingredient is listed in descending order. So what's highest in the product for, like, say those crackers, probably like wheat flour, is be the first thing you see, and like the last thing would be like, I don't even know, like sodium or salt, whatever maybe. So you always see that. The same thing goes for supplements. The thing that has the highest amount in a product, like a protein powder, for example, it's going to list high to low, like say chocolate protein. Up top of the actives of protein, but then down below you probably see something like cocoa powder, followed by whatever it is, like guar gum, xanthan gum, sucralose, natural artificial flavors, so on and so forth. So as you read from top to bottom in descending order, that kind of gives you a cheat sheet. You can probably figure out pretty easily on a lot of type of things if you have a relative idea in terms of dosages on what the ratio is and break it out and say if it's full of bullshit. Because there's sometimes I've seen a couple prop blends where it still makes sense, like, okay, this proprietary blended, I can pretty much digress and pick apart, what's in this product. Like something will say, oh, it has X amount of whatever, and it's in a proprietary blend. They disclose that one ingredient. Say that's the first or the third thing in. Like, okay, so if this is, say, caffeine at 300 milligrams, third ingredient in the proprietary blend, okay, it at least has 300 milligrams. Everything else is less than 300. And the two is above there. Okay, they're above 300. So that's kind of a quick synopsis and quick little cheat sheet to kick off this episode.
Yeah, so let's start with this. Okay, so the proponents for people that still use proprietary blends today, their biggest thing is like they want to protect their formula. It's formula protection is what you hear all the time. Some people will say it adds the mystery back to the supplement, which I think is a fucking weird explanation. But let's talk about it protects the formula from a supplement side, from a formulator side, because there are two different kind of types of proprietary blends that I'm going to talk about here. The first is Drew Peters goes into a lab, he creates an energy matrix, whatever, and then he decides to prop blend it because it's stimulants, and stimulants are what you feel. There's no clinical dosages, whatever. That's a proprietary blend there. But there's also proprietary blends on the ingredient supplier side. So you get Pico 2, for instance, is a proprietary blend that a lot of companies are using today from Compound Solutions that some people don't get crazy mad about because it's from an ingredient supplier with all the scientific data behind it. So for the purpose of this conversation, let's talk about the formulation side, protecting the formula. Bullshit or not, Drew?
I actually think there's legitimate rationale behind that. In that case, sometimes I have seen that. Like when I, for example, made Hide Icon. People, it's a fully transparent label. People say, oh, it's a proprietary blend. I'm like, everything on there is fully transparent. And I see these dick smokes are talking about the Pico 2 in there at a gram and says, oh, I'm sure this blend of 7 or 8 different things is going to really surely do something. I'm like, well, actually it fucking does, because it's a branded ingredient, and that specific blend is what the data is on. And it is 1 gram of that blend and that ratio in this product that's proprietarily protected. Right. Same thing comes for something like nitrosigine, which is arginine, silicate, and inositol. And they're bonded together. At what ratio?
Right.
I do know that there's a certain amount of arginine in that one, which I'm not going to disclose ever thing on here, but if you need to count actual arginine, I do know that number. But in certain cases, it doesn't really matter because it is the ingredient itself is a branded ingredient. There is one version of it that's truly allowed to be sold without patent violation. In that case, that proprietary blend is fine because it is a ingredients proprietary. I mean, if the study is on specifically, say, like Pico 2 or specifically on nitrosigine, if there is a disclosed 1 gram of, say, that Pico 2 in that product, you are getting what the studies and the data supports. Right. I'm not sure why. I'm sorry. I don't give a fuck who you are. Who all the most picky person out there is going to be like, well, I feel that there could be a little more turkey tail and reishi mushroom in the Pico 2 blend, and I'd feel it more. Shut the fuck up. You don't know that. You want to act like you know, but that's not how this works. Right. Okay, it's a blended ingredient, it's a proprietary ingredient. So there are a couple out there. S7's one, Spectra's another. Spectra's
actually a good one to talk about because it's 100 milligram dosage with like 50 things in it, so people lose their shit.
It is. But the thing is, clinical data supports at 100 milligrams of that exact ingredient. Yep. So in that case, that it's paying for it. And I think in that case, if it's a branded ingredient that's a truly legitimate source, and then it comes from the correct place versus some Yahoo that's blending all these things randomly together. I'm sorry, one thing that from the formulation side, when you pay for a branded ingredient in your product, the other part you're paying for is the right to use that research study. Because sometimes certain ingredients they only exist in like in the actual branded space. Like creatine is more broad. Right. The data's been done on this creatine monohydrate in general versus like you can't take arginine, throw it in a batch, some silica, and throw it in a batch, and an inositol, and whatever ratio in your little head to make that gram per serving and make that trusting claims. That's not how this works. You can't take something very specific, like say different types of kinetic, or also known as Vantrazine synephrine, from a generic source of synephrine, throw it in a batch of whatever milligrams and use those claims about what it does in terms of a reduction in body fat, not increasing heart rate, not increasing blood pressure. That's specific to that ingredient. So in that case, a big part of what you're paying for is the rights to use the studies and data done on that ingredient.
Right.
And I know opening the door over here, somebody's saying, oh, well, okay, they own this data because it's their ingredient, but okay, who funded the study? That's a whole other podcast. And there's some, once again, study bias. If a company that owns a product or owns an ingredient is self-funding the study, that's one to look at. But then also, again, they get paid to have it done at an independent, third-party place. But then again, a lot of times if it doesn't work, they're probably not going to publish the data. So, I mean, it's a toss-up on that.
Exactly. And to that point, like from an ingredient supplier side, the proprietary blends typically have studies behind it, like you said, like Drew alluded to. The proprietary blends from, say, Drew in the lab, typically they don't have studies published on why Drew, if you formulated a proprietary blend, why this is your blend. What will typically happen is they'll say, well, we tried different variations of this blend for years, and this is the one that worked best for them. Everybody's a little bit different. So now in terms of the brand side, we did a proprietary blend to protect our formula, which is still the common defense mechanism for prop blends in products today. I know, Drew knows, everybody knows, like, you can send in these products to a lab and pay X amount of dollars per whatever ingredient is on the label and have that lab run the test and find out if, in fact, that stuff is in there. Sometimes they find stuff that's in that product that was not listed on the label. Sometimes they'll find stuff in the product that is listed on the label, but at half the dosages. So from my standpoint, being not associated with a single brand at all, I don't necessarily say, hey, it's bullshit, but it's sort of bullshit because I could send in almost any product in the world, get it tested. Especially like if you claim you have a prop blend in the product and you're selling 1 million units of that product, you bet your fucking ass I'm sending that product in and finding out like, what exactly is in it. So either I can replicate it or call bullshit on your product.
And me, I'm on the brand side. I make stuff for a living. This is literally what I do for a living, is develop product. And I don't bring proprietary blends. I really don't. I never put them in my products, not because, I'm better than you, I'll tell you what exactly in it. But like to me, I'm like, if I was on the consumer side, I'd like to know that, hey, I like standing high on the science side of things. And I'm going to tell you exactly what's in the product because I made it for this reason. And I like to cite sources of why I dose things the way I did it. And honestly, there's nothing, in my opinion, here's opening a can of worms here. There's nothing these days that can be used legally on the stimulatory or even like most supplement side that you can actually use that you can't, that you'd have to protect. Everybody uses the same stuff to a degree. There's new things coming out, but the thing is, a lot of the new things coming out are going through the correct pathway, at least in my opinion. And there's studies being done on them that you're using that ingredient because there's, this is really cool. We found this, we can use it. It has GRAS status, whatever it may be, and it needs to be at this certain dose. So if you have it at that certain dose, then why wouldn't you want to tell people? Then also, I tell the story of the product. When I make a product, I like to tell the story. I'm gonna drop a huge hint right now. You'll be getting some of the new Dragon stuff when it comes out in January.
Right.
And one of my favorite parts, I think I've teased a little bit here, is the product tells a story. I'm not worried about putting a bunch of text on the bottles. Instead, the left panel is usually taken up with a magazine ad by a lot of brands. It's going to have some very visual, very cool, more bullet point and iconic type things, explaining the ingredients in very simple terms with some very cool blurbs. And I don't want to leak it because I have some really cool stuff. I'm really excited about this. But the thing is, I called it out very specifically because there's a reason and a rhyme of why these products are made that way. And I want to tell you the dosages because I'm like, hey, this is why we dose this at this to work in synergy with this. And here's the data supports this, and this outperforms whatever because we have this. To me, it makes more sense to disclose it. And honestly, it creates a sense of trust by the consumer. And I'm going to kick off the next segment here because I always have this shit, and I quite frankly, fuck off. I don't really care. And have people complain and I'm like, so I was wondering, what can you tell me exactly what's used to flavor this? I'm like, well, yeah, it's used in this case, like say an amino, it's natural and artificial flavors and sucralose, and that's about it. He's like, how much sucralose is in that? I'm like, I'm not going to disclose that. Oh, why? Because I don't have to.
Right.
And I'm not going to. The flavoring, on the other hand, I spend a lot of fucking time in the flavoring. That's the part too. You can make my product, and if you send it in the lab, you want to test it, sure. But there's a thing. I can guarantee you, I think I would guarantee it's near impossible, and I'm a science guy. If you were to take anything I make and send into a lab, you will not be able to get the exact flavor system, because here's the thing. For example, if I make like a blueberry lemonade flavored product, okay, you can send it in, you can test sucralose, you can send it in, you can test whatever it is, the
Right.
sulfur and potassium, any acid, but good fucking luck figuring out where I buy my flavor from, what the exact flavor code for that exact blueberry and that exact lemonade comes from. You're not going to figure it out. It's not going to taste the same. And in that case, I am going to protect my proprietary information because I consider myself a little bit of a chef. It's my proprietary work. When I work with, what our flavor house is, and okay, even though I tell you the flavor house, good luck, because let me tell you something. For every, like, say, strawberry flavor there's natural strawberry, there's strawberry cake flavor, strawberry daiquiri, strawberry candy, strawberry jelly, strawberry sweetened, there's like even a Nesquik flavored strawberry. There's probably 20 different strawberries within that same flavor house's library to grow about the same thing that all give different flavor notes.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right on the flavoring thing. That's not, but that's also not, I mean, yeah, it makes a product taste good, but that's not what's actually going to work for you within the body typically. I mean, right? Like, I know some people put like malic acid and things like that within their flavoring system. Yes, malic acid has some performance benefits to it, but I think overall, I cringe when I hear brands tell me, "Well, we did a proprietary blend because we're trying to protect our formula." Well, come on, man! Like, this is 2020. Like, I mean, sure you can, and it's fine. Like, I can try to reverse engineer that if you give me hints on certain things. To an extent, Drew can definitely do the same thing. Like, anybody without a lab can make their best valid attempt at reverse engineering stuff. Like, we mentioned like Chris Waldrom's brand on this podcast several times, Inspired. They still use proprietary blends in some things, but I also trust the source in which it comes from. And I've reverse engineered some of those products, and I was like, shit, they got to be pretty close to right on this. And I'd actually send Chris my reverse engineering. He's like, yeah, you're off by like 2, So it's like, it's not bad. But then there are those ones where it's like beta alanine, creatine monohydrate, and it's like 7 grams. It's like, okay, this is just dumb. But now a popular thing that we see now is, okay, let's fully disclose the actives in terms of like your traditionals, like your creatines, your beta alanines, your betaines. Let's disclose that, but let's make a stim blend and let's blend that up. Now, I, being an anti-proprietary blend type guy, am actually okay with that, assuming they call out caffeine at least out of the entire thing. Call out at least caffeine so I can do my job as a quote-unquote professional at looking at that and be like, is this brand dumb enough to put in 200 milligrams of synephrine? I don't know. Like, but you can look based on where caffeine is listed in that proprietary blend. Even advocates for fully transparent products like Mark Glazer told me at the Arnold this last year, he doesn't have a problem with proprietary blends within stim blends because a stimulant is what you feel. How about you, Drew?
Honestly, I'm on the same page as that. Depending on what the product is, if there's somebody finds a unique combination that they feel is really cool, I'm fine with it. Because here's the thing, I think it depends on if you're making specific claims on that blend. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, I'm not going to leak this. You'll see it on my next product. It's actually going to be in my stim-free Mr. Vane's dropping in end of January, early February here, the Mr. Vane's 2.0. There's a very specific ingredient in there that has data supporting that it can be used. It's a non-stimulatory adaptogenic herb that pairs with caffeine as well as can be used as a standalone ingredient. It's a very specific number. In that case, if you're making a claim on that specific ingredient, it has to be at a certain dosage. And if I see it in a blend, it might be a little bit suspect. In that case, if you're going to make claims specific to certain data, then in that case, you need to disclose a number because otherwise you can say whatever the fuck you want. Yeah. But other than that, like the I think Chris has like the lit blend or whatever it may be. I don't remember off the top of my head. He does a beautiful job formulating his products. In that case, yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of magic that can be done there using different stimulatory ingredients. But then again, there's no specific claims being made to say this is just the focused as fuck. I think is what he calls it, the focused as fuck blend. Yeah. And it paints a picture. It's cool, and to say, hey, this is our proprietary blend of these ingredients here. And he once again is, I'd like to know how much of this. I'm like, well, too bad. In that case, it's taking kind of let's put it this way. It's kind of like a special kitchen. You go in, and okay, you have this whole kitchen of all the ingredients in the world you want to make this stew. You all have to make the same fucking stew. You can use any ingredient in this whole fucking kitchen. Right. Okay, that's how the supplement industry is. You all have the same tools at your disposal. Go in, make your best stew. At the end of the day, like you're probably going to go in and like say wherever it is. Like you're not going to go to Pepsi, for example. I'm segueing here, and say I want to know the formula to Pepsi. What's in this? I want to know the exact amount of what I'm ingesting. They're going to tell you to fuck yourself 2 ways from Tuesday. You go to Coke. Hey, I'd like to know what is in Coke. Can I have the formula? I want to know what I'm drinking. fuck yourself, go drink Pepsi. You go down the street, Dr. Pepper, hey, what are the 23 ingredients of Dr. Pepper? Fuck yourself, go to, I don't even know. And they're going to keep that on because the thing is, that's proprietary. This flavoring, and it's unique to that brand. And when it comes back to the stimulant thing, that's uniquely done. And unless there's specific claims, then I'm not going to tell you, you know.
There are going to be people listening to be like, but Ryan, you just said you can send it in and get it tested. Yes, you can. You can. I at least want to know because there's no, to my knowledge, like there's not a ton of like clinical data on stims. I mean, in terms of like backing things, right? Like there are studies on caffeine and like how much caffeine can exert what type of force, yada, yada, yada. But it's not like your creatines, your even citrulines and things like that, where we know that there are numerous studies published that back certain dosages. So that's kind of where I'm at on it. At the end of the day, if somebody sends me a proprietary blend, I don't shit on the product right away because it's a prop blend. Like I refuse to do that. I at least try to put forth an attempt at it, like from my standpoint, because I have. And people give me shit all the time, Drew. It's like, oh, how can you put over a proprietary blend product? Well, because some of them actually mean well and they do good. Some of the prop blends, even though I'm not a huge fan of proprietary blends, are formulated nicely.
Yep.
But then you get the bad apples, the ones who pixie dusted, and the ones who just do really shitty things. And people listening to this are probably like, well, Drew should know, does pixie dusting still exist in 2020? And the answer is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see it here and there. But it's honestly not as common. A
Right.
lot of the times, I mean, there's a very specific brand that makes some things, and they have a very specific fetish with using clowns and a bunch of other retarded bullshit in terms of their packaging. I think anybody with half a brain that's familiar with the industry can figure out who I'm talking about. Where I'm like, get the fuck out of here. This is garbage. But at the end of the day, it's like, hey, they're killing it in their specific channels, and honestly, sometimes there's certain things, and I'll give you a little nugget of information here in a second on sometimes it actually has to be done a certain way. But for the U.S., let's talk specifically. Certain times there, I mean, I look at something typically if I see the dosage, and sometimes I even like look at that and like something doesn't add up. If it's a 10 grams of branched chain amino acids per scoop and it has flavoring in it and it says the scoop size is 10 grams, that's bad math, man. Or clearly it's not 10 grams.
Correct.
But most times if I see something, I can pick it apart pretty quickly. There are certain times in certain countries where they're not allowed to list certain things as ingredients, and I'm stating very specifically here, like China, for example. In certain channels, when you bring stuff into China, they can't use beta-alanine. However, you can use it as a flavoring agent. How the fuck that works, I don't know.
Interesting.
But
yeah.
I know. That was an issue we arose and made a product specifically for China a few years ago. So there are some certain things and things at play there, but generally most times it's just because they're being fucking shady or sketchy. But to answer your question, I think the biggest issue proprietary blends arose from things in a concentrated pre-workout era, because people were using these well-known ingredients, arginine, creatine, beta-alanine, whatever it may be, and combining it with basically drugs,
right.
DMAA, and amphetamine, and putting it in like a 3-gram scoop and claiming it's a concentrated pre, when it's literally nothing but stimulants, but they added creatine and beta-alanine and all this bullshit to make it seem like a more complete pre when that's not the case. That's what put the sour taste in everybody's mouth when it comes to proprietary blends. Same thing kind of goes for thermogenics. You know, a lot of times people with nothing but fucking stim bombs in a capsule, has nothing in it but caffeine, whatever, and no extra things in there. They're very expensive. Here's the thing, some of those ingredients are very expensive, dude.
Yeah.
And it looks good on a label, but at the end of the day, it's mainly caffeine and a bunch of bullshit just to make it look better. And that's kind of what kind of planted that seed. And then now that people have kind of gotten away from it, where it takes more actual shit to make people feel a product, because it can't just drop DMAA in something, you know, it changes the landscape a bit. That's why it's kind of gone the way of DMAA. You can't really do it anymore, which is fine. So that's kind of why that started and why it changed.
What I find comical too is people with anti-proprietary blends. And again, I want to make clear, like I'm not a fan of prop blends, but I can work with them. They'll refuse to buy a pre-workout that uses a prop blend, but then they'll use a blended protein. You know, like, I mean, so like a blended protein, guys and girls, is a prop blend. I mean, you know that you might get 50-50 isolate concentrate or whatever, but a lot of brands don't disclose that they're using X grams of isolate that yields this. I mean, there are a couple brands out there that do that. I think it confuses the consumer for the most part because most of them don't understand it like we do. I like to see like what Mark Glazer does and what Ghost does and, you know, some of these brands that call this out, but that's a prop blend. I mean, at the end of the day, you have your proteins and you have your cocoa powders and you have all your flavoring agents down at the bottom. I don't know what the fuck I'm getting. You know that you're probably getting more of an, like people will shit on Optum, right? Gold Standard Whey. You know it's an isolate and it's a concentrate. You don't know the ratio, but you know since isolate's listed first, it's at least 50% isolate. Like you can do that math, but I can't tell you more than that unless I go to Colombia and say what's in this.
I'm gonna be real with you. I mean, here's the thing. I very specifically know of a few proteins. I mean, bro, I can probably tell what's in most people's shit. Either A, I know the co-man, or I know the formulator, or I've seen the formulas, or I've helped many people because I'm a very helpful guy. And I review stuff. But there's certain things out there. You'll see like a blend of, say, whey protein concentrate, whey protein isolate, and whey protein hydrolyzate listed in that order. And in order to get the label claim of 25 grams of protein per serving, they'll have, whatever it may be. It'll be like, say, 23 grams of whey protein concentrate active, So in overall, it's probably like 25 grams. I don't remember the math top of my head. They have like 2 or 3 grams of whey protein isolate and then like a gram or half a gram of whey protein hydrolyzate just so they can have whey protein hydrolyzate on the label.
Yeah, I see it a lot.
But here's the thing. For most people out there, if they were to do nothing but put straight whey protein concentrate in the bottle and not even worry about it, I'm not telling you this, you probably wouldn't notice the fucking difference. Because to me, whey protein hydrolyzate is one of the most overrated things out there. My company, we do sell a partially hydrolyzed whey protein isolate. And that purpose, I never am going to go out there and say that, whey protein hydrolyzate, it does in fact digest faster. But I'm never going to say, it works 10 times better than concentrate or isolate. What it does, and I very clearly specifically stated this, is it's going to be an easily digestible form of whey protein out there. It's going to absorb fast to help you recover. And the other benefit you get versus isolate versus concentrate is that the isolate typically has little to no lactose. So if you have sensitivity to lactose, that's going to be the better choice for you.
Right.
Or if you have to be super anal retentive about your calories. I mean, I'm sorry, but people bitching about some whey protein concentrate, it's close. Here's the pros and cons. Whey protein concentrate is close to a whole food. It has less filtering, less stuff taken out, so lactoferrins and immunoglobulins, stuff like that, the good immune system stuff. Versus an isolate is going to have all that taken out. It's a pro and con. If you can swing 1 or 2 grams of fat and maybe a couple grams of carbs, that whey protein concentrate is going to work just as well. Some people get a little more digestive upset if they have sensitivity to lactose. They may have to go to the isolate. The concentrate is typically going to have a better mouthfeel. The isolate is going to be a little bit leaner, a little bit thinner, a little bit meaner. But if you don't have an issue with it, and I'm sorry, no matter how strict your diet is, if you can't swing a gram or 2 of fat and 5 or 6 grams of carbs, you probably have other problems in your life. You need to focus on more than that.
Yeah, that's one of the things too on this podcast. I always thought, most of the blends that you see on the market in protein is an isolate concentrate blend. And I think to myself, it's like, okay, why? I mean, an isolate is what sells. A lot of people will be like, oh, it's better, so I'm going to buy it because of that. Like the isolate concentrate blend is specifically for mouthfeel and flavoring. I mean, for the most part, for brands to do it, because like adding in that amount of concentrate makes it a little bit thicker, makes it flavor better. Because if you've ever had a traditional straight isolate versus a concentrate, typically the concentrate's probably going to taste better. But so when I look for blends, I'm looking for like a concentrate casein blend, something like that, where I have more of a fast and slow digestion protein. Again, you guys as consumers can do whatever the hell you please, but it's you start to look at these things a little bit differently the more and more you spend time in this space. Do I have any issue against an isolate concentrate blend? No. If they want to do that, I mean, the price per an isolate and price per concentrate roughly the same. I think isolate might be a little bit more higher now on the manufacturing side. Once upon a time, it was flipped. I mean, it's all about supply and demand. So it's sometimes it's cheaper to do an isolate than the concentrate, depending on the market value of it, and they go that route.
The issue I have is if you're charging accordingly. If you're charging somebody for the price of an expensive hydrolyzed whey protein, and it's nothing but a bunch of bullshit concentrate, and you just put that on there for label dressing and you're overcharging, that's where I'm at. They're like, come on, man, it's fucking people over. But if it's the same price in the same category, you may, quote unquote, on product have more inferior. At the end of the day, here's the thing. If the label claims 25 grams of protein and you're meeting 25 grams, then what's the issue? What's the problem with people? You're delivering this promise. The protein's what you're looking for. The protein's the whole fucking reason you're taking the product. I can guarantee you, I'd be willing to bet Ryan's house, I don't even know, something, because don't worry, you're in safe hands here. If you were to take both for a year, back to back or whatever, you would notice no difference in terms of muscle gain, performance, recovery, any parameter you want to check. The only thing would be in your personal comfort, preference, mouthfeel, and if you have digestive issues with concentrate versus isolate, that could be where it is. But most people, they don't have a problem. That's the main thing to come back to. It's like, what are you paying for? If you want to pay for them more, okay, sure, but...
As we kind of wrap up here we talk about protein, proprietary blends, which is kind of an area in which we've gone, and now companies calling out the yields of protein. When you see 25 grams of protein listed on the nutrition facts panel or supplement facts panel of that product, Drew, does that actually mean it's 25 grams of yielded protein, or can companies say this is 25 grams of that protein powder, which might yield 20 grams of total protein?
They for the nutrition facts panel. Here's the difference. On supplement facts panel is different than nutritional facts. Nutritional facts, you cannot make structure and function claims about it, which is where actually a lot of companies fuck up here. They'll put a nutrition facts panel on, but then on the front of it, they'll make claims for, increases strength and power, da-da-da-da-da. That's nutrition facts because it is a food product. You cannot make structure and function claims on a nutrition facts. Supplement facts panel, you can make structure and function claims, okay? Right. So depending what avenue you want to go. But say the nutrition facts panel, if you're claiming 25 grams of protein, it has to have 25 grams of protein if you were to test it. The one way to test bullshit on this, and you don't see it a lot, like people, they don't understand this concept, is they're like, if this has 24 grams of protein per scoop here. I don't know why the common number is 24 grams rather than 25. A lot of these, I don't know why they come at 24. But they look at it like, there's 33 grams of per scoop here, but I'm only getting 24 grams of protein. What's all the other stuff? I'm like, well, there's a bunch of filler and much nonsense. I'm like, well, here's the thing. I don't know where that accent came from.
That's great.
But yeah, apparently everybody shops for protein at Walmart.
Right.
I don't even know where damn protein come from over here. But here's the thing. Understand, you get this, is that no ingredient is 100% pure. Mm-hmm. You have to have a little bit of what is called overage. For example, if you were to say, like, even caffeine anhydrous, which is a lab-grade caffeine, is 98%. So every 100 milligrams of material used for caffeine anhydrous yields 98 milligrams of actual caffeine. Things are lower than that. Like dicaffeine malate is, I believe, 70% caffeine. So if you have 100 milligrams of it, you only have 70 milligrams caffeine. That applies to protein too. Right. Whey protein concentrate is 80% protein content by weight. Isolate is usually 90% or above. So if you factor that in, say if you have 10 grams of whey protein isolate, you're going to get about 9 grams of protein.
Right.
If you have 10 grams of concentrate, probably 8 grams of protein. So you have to account for that extra amount of material needed to meet the label claim, and the extra is, the other piece of it, whether it be fats, carbs, whatever it may be.
I'll put this in layman's terms for people to understand this, right? So if the label says 24 grams of protein, that's the active protein content, but it might have taken 28 grams of a weighted powder to get to that 24 gram claim, right? So now if you have 24 listed on the nutritional facts panel out of a 33.6 gram serving size, like, it's not, a lot of people just, and we did this in the past too, it's like we would take 24 divided by 33.6 and say, well, technically that 24, you're probably actually using like 27, 28 weighted amount of protein powder out of that total 30, so that way your actual other shit is a lot smaller than what people think. So there's a big miscommunication on how to calculate that. But we could talk all day on prop blends. I guess case in point is, like, they're not used as often today as they once were. We have them now in some stim blends. They are starting to kind of even go away from the protein world. My final takeaway, Andrew, and I'll let you do this too, is, like, not all prop blends are created equally. There are some that are fine. So if a company comes out with a prop blend, don't shit on it immediately. Like, look at the label, turn it around, and see, like, if you can sort of dissect it a little bit. If it deserves to be shit on after that, go right ahead. By all means, I'm all for it. But some companies do mean well. They just take that route for whatever reason they choose, and it's their business and it's their brand. They can do whatever the fuck they want with it. But as a consumer, you're the one that needs to understand what you're looking at. Yep,
100%. I mean, they couldn't say any better than that. It's product specific. Sometimes it's done for a good reason. Sometimes they're just being cheap, shady fucks. So use some common sense. If you've been in the supplement industry or the game a little bit, if you have a general idea of how much things are supposed to be dosed at, like, okay, typically if I see something at beta-alanine, say at least like 1.5 grams. If I need creatine, I need at least a couple grams. If you see something that has, very suspect numbers, like, okay, think of it this way. You have, say, a VW Beetle. Only so many people can fit in this little fucking car. And if you have 4 people or 6 people that weigh 300 pounds apiece, they're probably not all going to fit in that car. As a good analogy, using common sense.
Right.
But just use.
For those listening, like, in the next month or two, we might put together a curriculum for Common Sense 101 by Professor Drew Peters. It could help you all very, very much. If you like what you heard here today, hit the subscribe button on iTunes, Spotify, watch via YouTube. We're on the Facebook, the Book of Face, over at the Iron Jungle Podcast. Any ideas for topics in 2020? Because we have one more episode of 2019, and then I believe that's it, if I'm reading the calendar right. Who the fuck knows? But check us out at Vanilla Grill Drew on the Instagram, at Fitness Informant for us as well. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Until next week, I'm not going to do the PJ Braun thing. Can't do it. Won't do it.